Betrayal cuts deepest when the one you love learns to play your game and wins. DY presents. What happens when the cheater becomes the cheated? When the one you betrayed turns the tables in a way you never saw coming? This is not just a story about infidelity. This is a story about deception, power, and the ultimate price of betrayal. Stay till the end, because in this game, no one truly wins. DYPD. I never thought I would be the kind of man who cheats. Never. If someone had asked me years ago, I would have sworn on everything I held dear that I was loyal, devoted, and incapable of betrayal. But here I am, and this is my story. It all started so subtly that I didn't even notice the shift at first. My wife, Aisha, and I had been married for 8 years. Our relationship was stable, built on years of trust and understanding. Or at least, that's what I believed. But routine has a way of dulling even the brightest love. We had fallen into a cycle: work, dinner, small talk, sleep, rinse and repeat. Passion had become a memory, something that existed in the beginning but had faded with time. Then came her, Lena. She was a colleague, someone I had known for a while but never paid much attention to. Until one night, at a work event, we ended up sitting next to each other. The conversation started light. Work, life, the usual. But then, she laughed at one of my jokes, and not just a polite chuckle. An actual full-bellied laugh, the kind that made me feel like the most interesting man in the room. It had been a long time since Aisha laughed like that with me. I told myself it was nothing, just harmless flirting. But then, the messages started. At first, they were innocent. A joke about the boss. A meme she thought I'd like. But slowly, the messages became more personal. She asked about my day, about my dreams, about things Aisha had stopped asking about years ago. And I replied. Every single time. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, she texted, "You look stressed. Want to grab a drink and vent?" I hesitated. I should have said no. I should have gone home. Instead, I texted back, "Sure, just one drink." But one drink turned into two. 2 drinks turned into a lingering touch on my arm, and that touch turned into something far more dangerous. I don't know if it was the alcohol or the way she looked at me like I was the only man in the world. But that night, I kissed her. And I didn't stop. I told myself it was just a mistake, that I would never let it happen again. But temptation is a funny thing. Once you cross that line, going back feels impossible. And so, the affair began. I became a different man. I was checking my phone constantly, waiting for her messages. I made excuses to stay late at work, just for a chance to see her. I lied, again and again. But what I didn't realize was that Aisha was already watching. She wasn't stupid, and she was planning something I never saw coming. I used to believe that the worst part of betrayal was getting caught. That as long as no one knew, as long as the truth was buried deep enough, it couldn't hurt anyone. I was wrong. Betrayal is like a crack in the foundation of a building. At first, it's invisible, hidden beneath layers of paint and plaster. But over time, the crack spreads. It weakens everything. And eventually, no matter how much you try to cover it up, everything comes crashing down. And that ATM's exactly what happened to me. The web of lies grows. After that first night with Lena, I promised myself it was over. I went home, kissed Aisha on the forehead as she slept, and told myself that I would never let it happen again. But the moment I saw Lena at work the next day, I knew I was lying to myself. It was like an addiction, the thrill, the secrecy, the way she looked at me, as if I was the most desirable man in the world. I hadn't felt that way in years. So, one night turned into 2 nights turned into weekends. Weekends turned into secret phone calls at odd hours, hotel rooms booked under fake names, and excuses that started sounding more and more rehearsed. Aisha noticed the change, of course. How could she not? I had become a ghost in my own house. I barely looked her in the eyes. My phone was always in my pocket, on silent mode. I would turn away when texting, flinch whenever she asked where I'd been. I thought I was being careful. I thought I was smarter than the men who got caught. But I underestimated my wife. The suspicion grows. Aisha was never the type to yell, never the type to accuse without proof. She played the long game. At first, she didn't say anything. She just watched, studied me, collected evidence, piece by piece. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, she walked in and leaned against the doorframe. "Who is she?" My heart stopped. I forced a laugh. "What are you talking about?" Aisha didn't blink. "You've been different, distant. You barely talk to me anymore. And your phone? You guard it like it holds the secrets of the universe." I kept my face neutral. "Work has been stressful, that's all." She nodded, as if accepting the answer. But her eyes told a different story. She didn't believe me. And that scared me more than anything. A dangerous game begins. I should have ended things right then and there. I should have walked away from Lena, confessed everything to Aisha, begged for forgiveness. But I didn't. Instead, I convinced myself that I was still in control, that as long as I was careful, as long as I covered my tracks, Aisha would never know the truth. So I became more cautious, deleted texts, used a second phone, made sure Lena and I never went to the same place twice. But paranoia started to creep in. Every time Aisha looked at me for too long, I wondered if she knew, if she was waiting for the perfect moment to confront me, if she had already found proof and was just playing with me, letting me dig my own grave. And then, one night, something happened that changed everything. The setup. It was a Friday evening. I had told Aisha I was going on a work trip. In reality, I was meeting Lena at a hotel an hour away. I checked in, took a shower, and waited for her to arrive. My phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "I'm on my way. Room 312, right?" I smiled, but then, another text came through. From Aisha. "Enjoy your work trip." My stomach twisted into knots. It was an innocent message, but something about it felt off. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Did she know? Was she testing me? Or was I just being paranoid? Then another buzz, but this time, it wasn't a text. It was a notification. Someone had just logged into my email. My personal email. The email I used to communicate with Lena. I jumped out of bed, my heart pounding, logged in from another device. I refreshed the page. Everything was still there. The messages, the hotel bookings, the plans. I needed to delete them, fast. But before I could, something else happened. A knock on the hotel door, not Lena. Number someone else, someone I never expected. And at that moment, I knew. I wasn't the only one playing this game. Aisha had been playing too, and she was about to make her move. The knock on the hotel door sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't Lena. I knew that much. She would have texted me first. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, pretending I wasn't in. But then, another knock. This time, louder, more insistent. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Who the hell was it? Slowly, I walked toward the door, every step feeling heavier than the last. My hands were clammy as I reached for the handle. I took a deep breath and opened it. And there she was, Aisha, standing in the dimly lit hallway, her face unreadable. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. This wasn't possible. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was at home, texting me with a fake sense of normalcy. I forced a smile, my voice strained. "Aisha, what are you doing here?" She tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Funny," she said, stepping forward. "I was just about to ask you the same thing." My throat went dry. The trap. I had been so careful, so meticulous. How the hell had she found me? I tried to think of an excuse, something, anything, that could explain this away. A work thing, I muttered. A last-minute meeting. Don't, she cut me off, her voice sharp but quiet. She stepped into the room, pushing the door shut behind her. I felt a sense of panic rising in my chest. She was too calm, too composed. Aisha wasn't the type to scream and throw things. No, she was far more dangerous than that. She played the long game, and suddenly, I realized I had already lost. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. My stomach dropped when I saw the screen. My email inbox, open. "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" she asked, scrolling casually. The late nights, the excuses, the phone always face down, and then, of course, I remembered your little habit. I frowned. Habit? She smirked. "You always use the same passwords." My mind reeled. The email. She had access to everything, every message, every hotel booking, every lie. I opened my mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. "Save it," she said. "I've already seen it all." I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. "Aisha, please, You know what hurts the most?" She interrupted, her voice dangerously calm. "It's how TM's not even the cheating. It's the fact that you actually thought I wouldn't figure it out." I swallowed hard. Shh, she whispered, stepping closer. "Now here TM's the interesting part." She scrolled a bit more and then held the screen up to my face. It wasn't my messages this time. It was hers. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the name. A man's name. A long list of messages, some recent, some from weeks ago. My hands started to shake. What is this?" Aisha's eyes locked onto mine, her expression unreadable. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "You didn't think you were the only one playing this game, did you?" The other man. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I snatched the phone from her hand, scrolling through the messages. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. There was no way in hell. But the proof was right there, staring me in the face. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I wish I could see you again tonight, but he's home. When he leaves for his work trip, I'll come over." My vision blurred. My hands clenched the phone so tightly, I thought I might break it. Aisha crossed her arms, watching me. "Hurts, doesn't it?" I looked up at her, rage and confusion swirling inside me like a storm. "Who is he?" I growled. She smiled. "Does it matter?" I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The betrayal I thought I had so cleverly hidden had been happening right under my nose. "You?" I swallowed hard. "You've been cheating on me?" She laughed softly. "Ironic, isn't it? You spent all this time sneaking around, thinking you had the upper hand, when really you were just another fool playing a game you didn't even know you were losing." My fists clenched at my sides. "How long?" She sighed, looking almost bored. "A few months, give or take." My heart pounded. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell, to throw things, to demand answers. But how could I? I had no right. I had done the exact same thing. And now, I was standing in the ruins of the life I had destroyed with my own hands. Checkmate. Aisha took her phone back and slipped it into her pocket. "Here's the deal," she said. I'm not going to make a scene. I'm not going to scream or beg or cry. I'm done playing that role." I stared at her, my chest heaving. "So, what happens now?" She smiled. Slow, deliberate, terrifying. "Now," she echoed. "Now, we see who gets burned first." And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there in my own personal hell. I had played the game, and now it was time to face the consequences. I stood there, frozen. The hotel room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in, the air too thick to breathe. Aisha was gone. She had left without another word, without a single glance back. And now, I was alone, with the weight of everything crashing down on me. I had spent months thinking I was in control, thinking I was the one weaving the web of deception. But the truth was, I had been trapped in Aisha's web the entire time. She knew she had always known. And worst of all, she had played the game better than I ever could. The mind games begin. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind was spinning, replaying every conversation, every moment, trying to piece together the signs I had missed. How long had she been doing this? Who was the other man? Was he someone I knew? And why? Why did she choose now to reveal it? By the time I pulled into our driveway, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark, silent. I stepped inside cautiously, half expecting to find my belongings thrown out, half expecting to find Aisha waiting with another revelation. But she wasn't there. Instead, on the kitchen table, I found a single envelope. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. I hesitated before picking it up. My pulse was pounding in my ears as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a note. "You're not the only one who knows how to keep secrets. Sweet dreams." That was it. No threats, no ultimatums, no dramatic declarations of revenge. Just a reminder that I wasn't the only one with something to lose. I sank into the chair, the letter trembling in my hands. This wasn't over. Not even close. Aisha's next move. The next few days were torture. Aisha acted normal. Too normal. She still cooked breakfast, still asked about my day, still played the role of the perfect wife. But her eyes, they were different. There was something in them now, a glint of amusement, of power. She was in control now, and she knew it. And she wanted me to know it too. One evening, as I was leaving for work, she called out from the kitchen. "Oh, by the way," she said casually, stirring her tea, I'm going out tonight. Don't wait up." My stomach twisted. "Where are you going?" She smiled. "Just out." That was it. No explanation, no details. Just like the excuses I had given her 100 times before. I clenched my jaw. "With who?" She raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I don't remember you asking that question when you were the one sneaking around." I had no response. I watched her pick up her purse, slide on her heels, and walk past me without another word. The sound of the front door clicking shut sent a chill through me. The taste of my own medicine. For the first time in months, I felt what she must have felt. The unease, the paranoia, the endless questions with no answers. Where was she? Who was she with? Was she telling the truth? Or was she with him right now? I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, resisting the urge to call her. I hated this feeling. I hated that she had turned the tables so perfectly, and I hated that she was enjoying it. At around 2 a.m., she came home. I pretended to be asleep, but I heard her moving around the room, taking off her jewelry, changing into pajamas. Then she climbed into bed beside me, her back turned. I wanted to ask. I wanted to demand answers, but I had lost the right. So I lay there, staring at the ceiling, drowning in the silence. The breaking point. A week passed, and things only got worse. Aisha's outings became more frequent. She would disappear for hours, coming home late, never offering an explanation. And each time, she would leave me with a single phrase. "Don't wait up." The words taunted me. I was unraveling. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I followed her. I waited until she left the house, then got in my car and trailed her from a safe distance. My heart pounded as she drove through the city, taking turns that led away from the usual places she went. And then, finally, she stopped. A restaurant, upscale, candlelit, and sitting at a corner table, waiting for Hurrah, was him. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I saw the way he smiled when she walked in, the way she touched his arm when she sat down. A lump formed in my throat. I wanted to storm in, to drag her out, to demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, watching as my wife leaned in close to a man I didn't even know. And for the first time since this all started, I realized something. I was no longer in control. I had already lost, and now the real punishment was beginning. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. The restaurant's warm glow spilled onto the pavement, casting long shadows of people who had no idea their lives weren't crumbling like mine. Aisha was inside. With him, I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could see hers. The way she laughed, the way she leaned in, the way she touched his arm, the same way she used to touch mine. I wanted to get out, walk in there, drag her outside, demand answers. But I didn't, because the truth was, I already knew. This wasn't just some act to get back at me. This was real. She had moved on. And I was the one being left behind. The fire spreads. I didn't remember the drive home. It felt like my body was moving on autopilot, my mind stuck in an endless loop of the same thought. She's really doing this. She's really with someone else. I had convinced myself that I still had control, that I could fix this, that Aisha was just trying to hurt me, to get a reaction. But watching her with him? That wasn't revenge. That was a woman who had already checked out. When I got home, the house felt emptier than ever. I sat in the dark, waiting. For what? I didn't even know. Maybe for her to walk in and tell me it was all a joke, that she hadn't actually met anyone, that she still loved me. But when she finally came home, her face was calm, not guilty, not angry, just indifferent, like she had nothing to hide. She set her bag down and glanced at me on the couch. "You're up late." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Where were you?" She smirked, the same way I had smirked at her 100 times before. "Out." I clenched my jaw. "With him?" Aisha tilted her head. "Does it bother you?" I wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to make her feel the way I felt right now, but I didn't, because I knew that was exactly what she wanted. Instead, I leaned forward, my voice low. "Who is he?" She gave a small, amused smile. Would it make a difference? Yes, number I didn't know. All I knew was that the woman I had spent years loving, the woman I had taken for granted, the woman I had betrayed, was slipping away. And I had no idea how to stop it. The desperation creeps in. Over the next few days, I spiraled. I stopped texting Lena, stopped answering her calls. She wasn't important anymore. None of it was. Because I was too busy watching my wife slowly erase me from her life. Aisha had always been careful, always controlled. But now she wasn't hiding it anymore. She would get dressed up, spray perfume on her wrists, hum to herself as she got ready. She wanted me to see. She wanted me to feel what she had felt. And it was working. One night, as she was leaving again, I finally snapped. "Is this what you want?" I demanded, blocking the door. "To hurt me?" Aisha stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "I wanted you to feel something," she admitted. "To understand what it's like. But now..." She shook her head, her voice soft. "Now, I don't really care anymore." That was what broke me. Not the cheating, not the lies, but that. The indifference. She had spent months suffering in silence while I was with another woman. But now, she was done suffering. Now, she was just done. The inevitable explosion. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, drowning in thoughts I couldn't escape. How had we gotten here? How had I let this happen? Could I still fix it? And then my phone buzzed. Lena. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the message. "I need to see you. Now." I frowned. For a moment, I considered deleting it, pretending she didn't exist. But something in me told me to go. And that was my second mistake, because when I got to her place, everything went to hell. Lena's message had been urgent. I need to see you, now. I knew I shouldn't go. Not now. Not when everything in my life was already falling apart. But I went anyway. Maybe I needed a distraction. Maybe I wanted to feel in control of something, anything. Or maybe I was just a fool, chasing after one last mistake. The storm brewing. When I pulled up outside Lena's apartment, I could already tell something was wrong. Her lights were on, but the curtains were drawn. I knocked once, twice. The door swung open. She stood there, her face unreadable, eyes dark with something I couldn't quite place. "Come in," she said. I hesitated. "Lena, what's going on?" She stepped aside, letting me walk in. The air felt heavy, suffocating. Then she closed the door, locked it, turned to face me, and smiled. "How long were you going to keep pretending?" she asked. My stomach twisted. "Pretending what?" Lena tilted her head, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "That you were ever going to leave her." I exhaled sharply. "Lena, I never—" "Don't lie," she snapped, her voice sharp. "Not now." I clenched my jaw. "I told you from the beginning You told me nothing," she cut in. "You fed me crumbs, just enough to keep me waiting." I ran a hand through my hair. "Lena, I can't do this right now. My marriage is so—" "Your marriage?" She laughed, bitter. "You mean the one where your wife is screwing another man?" I flinched. She took a step closer. "I bet that hurts, doesn't it?" I stayed silent. She shook her head, eyes burning into me. "Do you know what the worst part is?" I swallowed. "What?" Her lips curled into a smirk. "I wasn't the only one you were lying to." The ultimate betrayal. A sinking feeling settled in my chest. "Lena, what are you talking about?" She picked up her phone and tapped the screen a few times. Then she turned it to face me. A video started playing. My blood ran cold. It was me and Lena, together, every stolen moment, every whispered promise, every time I touched her, kissed her, held her, recorded. And then now my voice, "I don't love Aisha anymore. She's just comfortable, safe. But you? You make me feel alive?" No. I looked up at Lena, my pulse pounding in my ears. "What the hell is this?" She shrugged. "Proof." My hands curled into fists. "You recorded me?" "Insurance," she said sweetly, "for when you eventually tried to walk away." My mind was spiraling. "Why are you showing me this?" Lena sighed dramatically. "Because I got tired of waiting. Because I wanted you to know what it feels like when someone rips your life apart." I shook my head. "Lena, listen." "Oh, don't worry," she said, stepping back. Not the one you have to explain this to." My heart stopped. She smiled. "I already sent it to Aisha." The final explosion. I don't remember how I got home. I barely remember the drive. My thoughts were a hurricane of panic and desperation. When I stumbled through the front door, the house was silent. Too silent. Then I saw her, Aisha, sitting at the dining table, phone in hand. She didn't look up as I stepped inside. She didn't need to. The air was thick with something darker than rage. Something worse. Finality. The video was paused on the screen. The words I had spoken were frozen in time. "I don't love Aisha anymore." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Aisha exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. Then she finally looked at me. And for the first time since this started, I saw the truth. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even hurt anymore. She was just done. "I was going to fight for us," she said quietly. "Even after everything, I was still willing to try." She shook her head, a small, bitter smile on her lips. "But you never were you?" I took a step forward. "Aisha!" She held up a hand. "No." A deep breath. I'm leaving. The words hit like a gunshot. I swallowed hard. Aisha, please, It's over, she said simply. We're over. And this time, I knew there was no coming back. The end of the game. The divorce was fast, clean. Aisha didn't want a long, drawn-out battle. She didn't take the house. She didn't take the car. She just left. And I was left standing in the ruins of my own creation. No wife, no mistress, no excuses, just silence. And the knowledge that I had no one to blame but myself. Final thoughts. Betrayal is a funny thing. You always think you're the one in control until the moment you realize you never were. Aisha won. Not because she cheated, not because she got revenge, but because she walked away without looking back. And me? Just another man who lost everything because he thought he could have it all. The end.